I woke up on the kitchen floor with blood drying on my forehead and my front door wide open. Neighbors stood in the hallway, saying my name clearly and calmly, as if nothing strange had happened. I stared at them without answering, because the name meant nothing to me. One of them helped me stand and repeated the name slower, as if volume could restore memory. I closed the door and locked it, even though I did not remember living there. The apartment was arranged with purpose and where that suggested years of routine. Keys hung by the door on a hook labeled with the same name the neighbors used. My wallet contained an ID card with my face, and that name printed cleanly beneath it. I said the name out loud, and it sounded borrowed. My phone showed missed calls saved under familiar labels I could not place. The date showed 5 years had passed since my last clear memory. I found an envelope on the kitchen table, addressed to me in my handwriting. The paper inside was yellowed and folded many times. It was an apology written to myself, dated 5 years earlier. The letter said, I was sorry for what I was about to forget. It said forgetting was necessary to keep living. It said I would hate myself if I remembered everything at once. My hands shook as I read the same lines again and again. The letter warned me not to ask neighbors for explanations. It warned me not to open the locked box under the bed. I looked under the bed immediately and found the box exactly where the letter said. The lock was old and scratched, as if opened many times before. I did not have the key. The apartment made small, settling sounds that felt timed to my movements. I checked the bathroom mirror and saw a thin scar near my hairline that matched the blood on the floor. I found a calendar with entire months crossed out in thick marker. One date was circled heavily and marked Remember Later. I tried to recall what happened on that date, and nothing came. I heard someone knock and say my name again from the other side of the door. I stayed silent and waited until the footsteps left. I searched drawers and found notebooks filled with careful handwriting describing daily routines. The entries stopped abruptly 5 years ago on the same circled date. The last entry said, tonight, I end this version of me. I found sleeping pills in the cabinet and counted them carefully. I found fewer pills than expected based on the prescription date. I checked my phone and found a scheduled email set to resend itself every year. The subject line read, I am sorry again. The body of the email was identical to the letter. I canceled the schedule and immediately received a notification saying it had already sent. My inbox refreshed and showed the message sent to me that morning. I realized I had arrived at the end before understanding the beginning. I sat on the couch and forced myself to read the letter again slowly. It described an incident that started with neighbors greeting me by name every day. It described the name slowly losing meaning each time it was spoken. It described me pretending nothing was wrong while writing notes to myself at night. The letter said I had learned something I could not live with while remembering it. It said I had chosen erasure over repetition. I found a voice recording on my phone labeled, "Do not play unless alone." I played it anyway and heard my own voice steady and flat. The recording said, "If you are hearing this, you survived." The recording said, "You did something you believed was unforgivable." The recording said, "You will be tempted to open the box." The recording said the box contains proof and permission. I carried the locked box to the kitchen table. The bottom of the box had dried stains I did not want to identify. I searched the apartment again and found the key taped behind a photo frame. The photo showed me standing with a group of neighbors, smiling closely together. Everyone had their arms around each other like family. I did not recognize any of the faces. I unlocked the box and lifted the lid carefully. Inside were printed emails and handwritten notes arranged neatly. The emails showed conversations between me and the neighbors over several years. The messages described shared dinners and favors and long talks late at night. One message thanked me for keeping something safe. Another thanked me for staying quiet. The notes in my handwriting repeated one sentence in different ways. They all said they will forget too if I remind them. I found a small digital recorder at the bottom of the box. The recorder had one file saved. I pressed play and heard a room full of voices, including mine. The voices were calm and coordinated. The recording described a plan to remove a problem permanently. The word problem was repeated instead of a name. I heard my voice agree without hesitation. The recording ended with silence and a date matching the circled calendar. My phone rang and a neighbor's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring until it stopped. Another apology email arrived in my inbox, identical to the others. I understood the apologies were not for forgetting. They were for remembering just enough. I placed everything back into the box and closed it. I did not relock it. I returned the key to the frame. I wiped the blood from the floor completely. I practiced saying the name in the mirror until it sounded natural. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Neighbors smiled and greeted me again by name. I smiled back and answered correctly this time. I realized the shocking moment was not waking up bleeding. The shocking moment was choosing to stay. I began reconstructing my days using the notebooks and emails. The pattern showed that I was the keeper of something shared. The neighbors trusted me with memories they did not want to carry. The plan described in the recording was not violence, but erasure. They had gathered to remove a truth from all of us. The truth was written in code across the notes. It described a single event that connected everyone in the building. It described a mistake that could not be reported or discussed. I understood why no authorities were involved. The agreement was mutual silence through forgetting. I had volunteered to remember longer than the rest. I had volunteered to hold the details until the erasure was complete. The cost was isolation inside my own mind. The letter apologized because I knew the cost beforehand. The neighbors greeted me by name because names were all that remained. I walked through the building and saw familiar routines repeated precisely. Everyone moved with practiced normalcy. I noticed small inconsistencies that matched the notes. A repaired wall where damage once existed, a replaced door with new hinges, a shared storage room cleared of old items. The truth pressed against the edges of my thoughts without forming words. I returned home and listened to the recording again carefully. This time I focused on background sounds. I recognized the room by the echo pattern. It was the basement common area. I went there immediately and stood in the center. The space was clean and empty. The walls had been repainted recently. I touched the floor and felt uneven texture beneath the surface. I did not dig or pry. I already knew what was there conceptually. The horror was not an image, but a structure. We had agreed to forget together, to continue living together. I had broken the symmetry by remembering longer. That imbalance created the bleed through I was experiencing. The apologies were not just to me. They were to the group for risking recall. I realized the scheduled emails were a safeguard. If I remembered too much, I would be reminded to stop. The blood on my forehead came from falling when the memory surged. The open door meant I had tried to run. I returned upstairs and locked the door again. I wrote a new note in the notebook. I wrote that the system was still working. I wrote that I would reset again if necessary. I scheduled another email to myself 5 years into the future. I wrote the apology carefully and clearly. I did not include details. I included only instruction. I placed the letter on the table where I would find it. I lay down and prepared to let go again. The neighbors continued their routines, undisturbed. The building remained quiet and orderly. I woke up on the kitchen floor with blood drying on my forehead and my front door wide open. Neighbors stood in the hallway, saying my name clearly and calmly, as if nothing strange had happened. I stared at them without answering, because the name meant nothing to me. The cycle had closed perfectly. I now understood the true purpose of the letter. It was not an apology for forgetting. It was consent for repeating. The horror was not what we erased. The horror was how well it worked.